All right. We'll get started here in just a second. It was fun. I mean, it was a good 11 minutes. I'm going to play it, excuse me, during the podcast. I'll do one of these again, which y'all haven't seen in a long time, so we can mark it.
Power to the people.
Power to. I'm going to do this at some point after we're talking, Caleb. Like, I haven't done that in a while. Just to kind of pause for a second so I can put that audio in. Power.
Well, I'll do it at the same time.
You have no idea how hard I've worked to not get us canceled every time you do that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Taking a lot. It's really taken a lot.
All right, here we go. Well, that was fun. Welcome into the Bite Me podcast. John Lopez right here. Captain Scott Knoll is right in front of me, as is Captain Caleb McCumber and Captain Dean Thomas. And I got to tell you what, our guys have cleaned up real nice. The screens, the backdrops are looking fantastic. Caleb just did his. Dean did his earlier. Scott's got that new $7 million house or whatever it is that he's been working on for all these months. And I got my lone 30-inch fish behind me with my all my credentials from the Olympics and such. But that's neither here nor there. Had a really good thing happen right before we came on the air, and that was a live release of $120,000 redfish potentially, and kind of a surprise. A green tag, I think it's Lone Star 1884 is what they're calling it, an anniversary fish, where if you catch the green tag redfish, it's an 18-inch redfish, you get a year's supply of Lone Star. And now I don't know if that's a year's supply for us or a year's supply for regular people, but you do get a year's supply of Lone Star. So that's kind of cool. We're going to get to that in a minute. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get the podcast. Don't forget to join the group page where you can see that. You can see that video if there's a link on that page. And of course, don't forget to the YouTube channel as well. But let's get to it. We got a lot of great topics today for the podcast, and our guys are chomping at the bit to get to some of those. But all three of you guys saw the video. You got any idea? Yeah, there were a lot of context clues if you watch the whole video, and we're going to play the audio from it here for those who do not have. For those that do not have, didn't watch it on YouTube or just want to listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcast, Scott had this smirk on his face the whole time, like he could almost pinpoint where it was. Scott, I'm going to start with you. Could you figure out, did you have any idea? There were some trees. There were a couple of piers. There was a little beach area there.
Well, there's not too many places on the coast that have trees like that right down to the water. So that's why I started thinking maybe Trinity. But you shot me down on Trinity, so
yeah, I don't think it's that, but it was pretty dang cool. Dean,
and Goose Island by the Big Tree in that part of Copano Bay has trees and a little beach access, but I couldn't recognize it.
Yeah, Caleb,
definitely not Matagorda.
Definitely not Matagorda with those trees right on the beach. That one I know. But anyway, if you want to see all that, we're going to play the audio here in a little bit, but I want to get into some topics first with our guys and what's been going on. We had some tornadoes down here, man. I was without power for 3 days. I don't know about you guys. My son, my daughter still does not have power today from Thursday's storm, and my son got his power just this morning. I don't think I'm going to go around the horn with the same question, and usually I like to mix up the levels of the question with each of you, so you're not just repeating the same thing. But I am going to keep it the same here. What have you been doing, Caleb? I'm going to start with you. What have you been doing on the water? What have you seen? And did the tornadoes do anything down on the coast that might have disrupted anything?
Yeah, I'm going to be dead honest, dude. I have not been outside of this studio for 2 weeks. I talked to Pat and Scott and Dean to find out that outside still exists. I have spent the last 6 hours recording a welcome video to Angler U off of this teleprompter I got. And then I learned that I don't read good. So I had to delete it all. Scott and Dean have seen the outtakes. And that
you don't read goodly? You don't read goodly?
I don't read good with a U.
Well, I'm going to let Dean and Scott talk about the question I asked. Then you tell us about Angler U since we're here.
And Angler U is going to be rolling out here in a couple of weeks. We we accepted 20 people, and it was pretty cool that we got those 20 people in about 5 minutes. And we are going through. They're looking at a lot of the media that's on it. We are adding more. We tested our live webinars yesterday, where we're gonna have people like Scott and Dean on, and it's the same platform as this. They can ask questions over there in the chat, and we'll answer it. It'll be a podcast like this, except we're not talented enough to write scripts like you do. Therefore, the listeners get to write the script for us. And good Lord, I'm just terrified at what directions these are going to turn.
We're not even talented enough to follow a script.
Exactly.
Or read a teleprompter.
Even when I give it to you, I give it to you every Monday night.
Well, you see, John, we get this script, and the bottom of it is this little blue thing we can click, and we go, there's the blue thing, click it.
That's all we care about.
That's how.
That's why I put it on the bottom. So even just by accident, you might read a couple of things. That's why I put it on the bottom.
Okay,
so Dean, I'll put it in the middle.
I think
put it in the middle. Throw a little curveball. Oh, June 5th is when you're officially launching.
We're finally going to officially launch it. Yes, sir. So let's talk about fishing again.
We'll put the link up there and everything else. All right, Dean, what are you doing? And I was actually down there this past weekend, so I know it didn't disrupt too much, but did it just, other than the bite? Good Lord, the bite was awful. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit when we talk about all the boats on the water for the babes on the bay. But anything happening weather-wise and fishing-wise? Okay. What have you been on?
I don't know if you understand tornadoes exactly, because
it's not a hurricane. I get that.
Well, you're 165 miles away from me, so basically, it had no effect on me.
But no rain or storms.
It rained in like 16 years, and so it's pretty much the same old here.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's still windy as hell. Tide's still up really high. Fishing it was decent. I mean, it hasn't had any real fast and furious days, but like to be expected, we're mixing in speckled trout on the flats in the same place that we're catching redfish. Because it's been windy, I haven't been able to fish the drop-offs and the deeper stuff that's exposed to the wind, which normally has very consistent speckled trout fishing this time of year. But I mean, that should change here directly.
Scott?
I fished all week, and when we talked last Tuesday, I was hoping that the water would fall out, and it did.
Oh, yeah.
I saw one day.
I saw some videos.
And that one day, it went off, man. I mean, I had good schools all day long. Ended the day with a really big school that we pulled, I think, 4 fish out of on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
It was awesome. The wind had died down. The water fell out about a foot and a half, and drew all the fish out of the trees, and it was really good. Then I went back the next morning, and it was right back where it started.
Yeah.
And the schools were still out. They were still along the edges for a couple of days. And then I didn't fish Saturday. It was windy as hell Saturday. And I went out Sunday, and it was kind of back to the same thing I'd been dealing with. The water was super, super high, and all I could see was the fish were way, way back in the trees. We caught a few, but it wasn't as good as it had been when it was lower.
Yeah.
Did get rained on Friday, though. That's first time.
So did Caleb just now in his studio.
Yeah. That's the first time I felt rain in a long time, man. It was cool.
Mm-hmm.
It was so cool I didn't even put a rain jacket on. I just sat there and hold around in the rain.
Yeah, let it soak in. Caleb, how about Scott getting back out on that skiff every day? Isn't that just warming the heart?
I'm proud of that little fella. He tries real hard, doesn't let anything get him down. What it is I call him like, hey, let's do something. He's like, I got to find something else to do, and I got to find it now. So I feel like I've really helped him get back on that horse.
You have. Also getting rid of getting done with the house or whatever. All right. So this is a me question. We got a lot of listener questions, but this is a me question that I think our listeners would want to hear. So this past weekend, You know, I think I was mentioning it last week, took my son and his buddy out fishing. We caught like 6 or 8 trout and a bunch of blow ups, but no takers on any redfish. But man, the boat traffic. I mean, it was worse than a holiday. It was the babes on the bay. And Dean, I'm going to start with you on this one. I mean, it was overwhelming boat traffic. And
yeah, I was lucky enough to be absent that day. We were at the beach for a couple of days.
I mean, it was
1,700 entries.
How many?
1,700.
I think they were all in Redfish Bay. I think I'm not sure, but I think
probably was. No, I heard stories from the marinas on how bad it was at the ramps, and yeah, it's a free for all on that weekend, man. It's nuts. It's worse than the 4th of July. It's worse than the holidays. It's absolutely crazy. And you know, the tournament scene, it brings out the worst in people sometime. They do a lot of crazy things that they wouldn't normally do on a normal day. And yeah, I was glad I missed it. Glad you were there to enjoy it.
Well, I did enjoy it, but I kind of was thinking about this question because we stayed in this one area and we're getting a bunch of blow-ups, but never any takers for at least 2.5 hours. And my thinking there was, why would I want to go anywhere else at this point? I got here first. I got there right at daylight, and I knew everything was going to be run over, Scott, and just boats everywhere and traffic and all that. And so that was kind of my strategy. I'm going to stay here, just pound, grinding it out. I ended up moving just a little bit where I hadn't seen any boats, you know, from my boat, looking around as we always do. So that was kind of my strategy. And it got me to thinking about a question like, what do you do if you have to be there? By the way, the Babes on the Bay is a fantastic tournament. I'm not talking about that. It just led to a big crowd. I mean, I'm not criticizing them by any stretch. It raises a lot of money. It's awesome. But like, what do you do, Scott? Like my strategy was, I'm going to stay here. We're getting at least some blow-ups. I'm just going to grind it out. And then I ended up moving to 2 places very nearby that I hadn't seen a whole lot of boats. But when you see a lot of boat traffic, what is your strategy in a given day?
I disappear into the backwaters. I mean, I get as far back in there as I can go, places that nobody's really running. I've got some little back ponds, no name ponds and creeks and stuff I go up into. If you're stuck having to be out there because your boat won't do that, what you did is probably the best strategy. Either that or fire that engine up and come up to Port O'Connor, find out what the boundaries are for that tournament. Yeah, and go outside those boundaries.
How big a run was that going to be?
I don't know, but Emily and the crew from Fish Tackling Limited, they left from here, and they didn't trailer the boat down. They ran over there from up here, and they left here at like 4:30 in the morning or something crazy like that. Yeah, but and they came in 6th. I didn't know there was 1,700 boats in that thing, but they came in 6th place. They did pretty good.
Yeah, I talked to her this week because I dropped off my trolling motor. It on the about an hour and a half in, it just stopped deploying, but it wasn't anything battery related. So I dropped it off, and I was talking to her about that. Caleb, you're in tournaments all over the place, which you know crowds. I mean, you know crowds. Now your tournaments are a little bit at a different level, but just for our sake. Like I said, I know what I did, but what would you recommend for our listeners that are trying to manipulate that?
Well, first off, the first time I had ever heard of one of these female tournaments, it was called Lingerie on the Bay. And I thought,
I think that might be a little different.
I thought bad ass.
Yeah.
And so I went to the crowd, and turns out the name of the tournament was quite misleading.
Was it?
Yeah, I thought, man, they better have sunscreen, lots of it. Holy.
I was standing in line at the Babes in the Bay weigh-in one time, and that's the exact same thought that went through my mind. I was like,
"Where are the babes?"
I was like,
"Come on, I don't want to get canceled." Come
on. Well, just for the one in line in front of me didn't have enough sunscreen. Didn't have.
I got you.
And every time they bent over to pick up the cooler, there was no mystery.
Well, see, it has its advantages.
They're just more bae than there was babes.
Yes, there was.
You know,
no, it's a wide variety. Let's just put it at that.
Like everything else. So yeah, I mean, it was a ton. Go ahead, Caleb. Look, you got something.
Oh hell, I thought you were going to accept that answer. No, I believe it or not, I've been in tournaments with like the 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 boats, and we just all spread out pretty good and didn't really get on each other too bad. There's some of them that's just absolutely terrible. That trio in Matagorda is the bane of my existence, and there's no getting out of it. That being said, I think the Excalibur they have in Port A, for whatever reason, Ron Henney always decides to schedule that one on the 4th of July. And so
great.
I have indeed dealt with this. And just like whichever one of them said it, how far can you go? I ran all the way to Mansfield just to get away from the crowds and everything. But if I'm that doesn't really answer the question. If I'm guiding in Matagorda and there's a huge tournament going on that day, I launch at a different site, and then I just get weird as hell. I go up a river. I go up a ditch. I go somewhere that people just don't really hang out at and make my day there. And I'm not really casting shade at the tournament fishermen because I'm one of them. Part of me is I'm staying out of their way for the day. Let those guys go do the best they can and try to win some money. And I'm not gonna be in anybody's way. But I just think, how weird can I get? Where can I go that people aren't really gonna hang out at? Matagorda is my home, so I find those places. If you know Park Off or whoever, they probably know some weird places down south that they can go to, and that's pretty well what I do.
And it affects the fish, Dean. I mean, we fished hard, like I said, and then we just started bopping around after that, and it was a no go. I mean, it was absolutely a no go. So I actually told them, but they had to leave. Why don't we go in and then come back about 5 o'clock? Come back out in the evening.
Yeah, and at that point, 5 o'clock is not going to help you either, because every square inch has been run over. You get up early, you go to the most likely spot that you think you're going to catch a fish. And the reality of it is you get 1 or 2 hours in the morning that are your best chance of fishing. And from there on, the rest of the day is going to be no matter if you get an idea and you try to go somewhere else, somebody's already been there and it's been run over. And even in weekdays, like when you go behind other boats, like today I was out on the water, and I don't have a problem going behind other people on normal, slow, regular days. But on those days with extreme conditions, you go early, you get it done in 1 or 2 hours. And after that, you just do the best you can.
Yeah.
The strategies of some folks that I have observed over the years is you don't go fish at all. You just go out there and float around and observe how everybody's doing and where everybody's at. And then you go back to the scales and see who brought in big fish. And then the next morning you get up before they can leave and you go catch more of said big fish. And I mean,
Sundays are good. Sundays are good after a tournament because everybody's hung over.
Well, John, sounds cool. Unless you're a guy that fishes 2-day tournaments.
Well, this is true.
Because I just told you about a $32,000 story.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was that good.
No. Okay. It cost me $32,000. The people using those strategies.
Oh, now it's
or you could put a PVC pole down and come back the next day.
Oh no, that stinks. We're not naming names. We're not naming names. All right, so here let's get to some listener questions. They're always good, and we have a bunch of them as we go. So. This is the most likely reason you lost that fish. And this was a weird one to me. I'm just going to read it. Like mistakes that you guys have seen. We'll take different levels here. So you guys aren't necessarily, like I said, answering the same question. We're going to, mistakes you guys see most often from people trying to hook or land a fish. What when you have a trout or a redfish or a flounder, is there anything different? And some other things that you might offer. Here's the question. I was fishing around this past Sunday. Able to locate some fish, hooked up, constantly losing fish. After a few short runs on what I could see really decent reds, the hook would just pull free. I got new hooks, even changed hooks while I was out there, still would lose the fish. due to the hook being pulled out. Is there anything the Bite Me crew can recommend to me? Because apparently he lost several fish. Scott, you take the first part of that, and then I'll add some levels with Dean and Caleb.
Well, I don't lose a whole heck of a lot of them. I'm not really sure what the guy's doing. I mean, I've got customers on the boat all the time, and they're wrestling fish and doing crazy stuff with the rods, and I'm trying to grab the fish. I don't use a net, but I really don't seem to have that problem a whole heck of a lot. The only thing I could think was maybe his hooks weren't quite sharp enough. He wasn't setting the hook hard enough. Maybe he's got his drag a little light. And as he's setting the hook, it's just not drilling it in there. But I mean, even with the fly rod, we don't lose that many.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
needs super glue.
Yeah.
what Scott just said on accident was, we have our tackle dialed in to know what hooks them and keeps them there.
Yep.
To me, if you're not using a Knotty Hooker 4/0 wide gap on redfish, you're absolutely screwing up. My biggest problem with those is it's too hard to get the damn fish off of them. I don't lose. If I lose fish, it's because I cut them off on the boat. Scott's been doing it long enough. He has the gear and the tackle that he knows this holds onto him. There's a lot of jig heads out here. I'm not saying they all suck. I'm saying that there's ones you can buy that aren't as effective. And trout, there's things you got to do to land particularly a big trout. A redfish, just have quality gear and he's yours.
All right, talk about the trout. One thing I've
trout,
lost trout, just so you know, like one thing back in the day, I used to do this all the time. When I reached down either to grab or net the fish, I would turn my rod, like, I don't know, like my wrist. And a lot of times that would affect it. I don't know why, but it would, and I would lose a fish here and there. But let's help our listeners. Trout
is so if you use the tackle the gear that I'm talking about, a redfish, usually when somebody loses it because they didn't get it to them fast enough. Trout is because they try to get it to them too fast. And I'm not talking about little ones. Let's say 24 inches up, like heavier, better fish. Tight drag, you rip a hole in their lip and they'll shake it out. Can shake it out. Try to bring them in too green. They're doing that tail walk and shaking their head and slinging that thing all the way over there, all over the place. When you're trying to land them, if you're horsing that fish and panicking because you want that big fish on to take a picture, you are incredibly lessening your chances of landing said fish. A trout, it's a loose drag. It's let her take what she needs and just kind of coax her in. A lot of people would do that, and then once they see her, that's when they panic and start pulling on her and trying to get her, and then slapping her with bogas, slapping her with a net, anything like that. Long story short, to say it as simple as I can, on a trout, just relax, chill the hell out. You waited all morning to see that big fish land in your line. Give her time, bring her in nice and easy. A redfish, hook him with the right stuff and get his butt to you as quick as he can, because the redfish is the one that'll pull a drag and cut you off on shell or the boat or something like that.
Yeah, Dean, the first thing I thought of was drag. I don't know what your thoughts are on this.
I mean, it hard to elaborate, much on what's already been said. The only thing that I was thinking about whenever I read that was, I think he said he was using a crankbait.
Yes.
And sometimes if you have a big bodied bait, I mean, they can use leverage against that bait to pull the hook out, depending on how it's hooked. I mean, as they twist and turn left and right, if the hook is somewhere in the lip or the skin and that body of that lure gets up against it as it's turning the other way, I mean, that can actually provide some leverage and pull the hook out.
Yeah.
But if if you're using a soft plastic, there's no leverage that they can use against the lure. But I mean, I watch a lot of fish get fought, and they don't just randomly pull and swim. It's a calculated effort to get that hook out of their face. I mean, they feel it. They feel it on one side. They run to the right. They tug on it. If that ain't working, they turn their body the other way. They spin that thing around and they tug on it the other direction. I mean, it is not random and arbitrary. It is an effort for that hook. I mean, they feel it and they work to get it out of there. So if they feel leverage on one side, man, they're going to keep working with that.
Yeah,
it may have been the lure.
On a top water crankbait, wake bait, stuff like that with the treble hooks. I will be easier with the redfish. Not as much in a top water do they not hook themselves in the lips, but I've seen a lot on wake baits and crankbaits where they don't actually hook themselves in the sides of the mouth. They end up hitting it and sucking it in and hooking themselves in the back of the throat around their crushers or whatever that little butthole looking thing is way in the back behind their lips. And that I have seen a lot hooked there. And like Dean said, they can use their body weight and pull it out. And on top of all that, especially if you're tournament fishing, when you hook them back there, you have them hooked in the tongue or something, you automatically have a weak fish on your hands. So if you're really horsing them, you're going to have problems with him later on in the live well.
And Scott, Caleb said something earlier that I thought was interesting, because the more you fish, the fewer fish you lose, and that's just flat out experience. Staying calm. Like, if you catch a 27, 28-inch redfish and you don't fish a lot, you get really excited. Same thing with a big trout. You get really excited and maybe get out of your skin a little bit. I think we're trying to tell people, go fishing more, get some experience. That's one of the things as well.
I see it a lot on the tarpon. Hell, one of my good buddies from Homicide came down last year. He's caught marlin all over the world. He's caught sailfish. He owned a big offshore boat for many, many years. He knows what he's doing. But as soon as the tarpon, that's the first time he'd ever hooked a tarpon. And as soon as it jumped, he pulled back instead of letting it, giving it a little slack and letting it pull. He pulled the lure clean out of its mouth while it was in the air. And he started cussing himself. He said, "Man, I know better. I know better than that. I don't know what I was thinking." He was just excited.
Yeah.
Hey, John, tell him about you pulling all them hooks out of them rooster fish mouth.
Yeah, man. I think 7. I think 7 of them. Maybe that's where that thought came from.
And that dude, he politely yelled at you to don't do that. And what'd you do?
I kept doing it. Yeah. And I'd never caught roosterfish, kind of like what Scott was talking about.
Scott showed all of us how to properly catch a redfish on a lure. You just let him eat it for about 15 seconds before you set the hook.
You won't lose it then. I mean, you'll lose it at the marina. But you won't lose it getting it to the boat. You also lose a lure at the marina as well. No, that roosterfish is a great example, kind of like what Scott was talking about. That last one hurt, man. Oh, that last one hurt that I lost. I did it all perfect, hooked it, big old roosterfish, and then boop, there it goes. But oh well, that's what happens when you don't do it. All right, I think this is going to get a little lively here. I like when our guys get a little lively here. So just a little pulling back of the curtain. A lot of times, we're texting each other during the week or whatever, Dean and Scott and Caleb and myself. And so we were texting each other pictures that we saw on Facebook and of things that people were posting and such. And I sent one, I don't know if it was this morning or yesterday afternoon. Some dude posted a picture of all these fish. I mean, way too many fish to keep, but that's just my opinion. And said, something about Sabine is hot right now. And I'm like, ain't no way that picture is recent. Because I know Sabine. I've fished Sabine almost every week for about 5 years. And that water was fresh. And it wasn't like salty underneath the top. No, it was fresh. Because of all the rain and runoff we got. So, Scott, I'm thinking if it's posted on Facebook, it must be true, right? No. This happens way too much. Like, why do people do these things?
Well, in his case, he's probably trying to salvage some business, would be my guess. If he visits that area, it's all fresh. Everybody knows it. They're canceling trips.
Yeah.
And he wanted to go out and show that there was still some fish around. He may have gone. I mean, it may have been right that he was at Sabine, but he was outside the jetties probably. I would imagine that's where all the fish went. They got pushed out. There might be a salty spot in there in some cove somewhere that he knows about. I mean, there's still some up in Upper Galveston and Trinity that even with all this fresh water, there's still some areas that'll hold a little salty pocket if you know where they're at.
Yeah,
but that's most of the time. That's when you see the guides posting pictures with a whole lot of fish. They're hurting for business and they're trying to rustle something up. Just the three of us, we don't really work that way.
Yeah.
If it sucks, I'm gonna tell you it sucks. You can still come if you want to.
I don't want to go out if it sucks. No.
Well, then you don't want to.
Yeah. There was a dude after the freeze, a guide over here, and it was I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks after that, our big freeze. And I think it was in response to some of the YouTube videos I had done and some of the stuff we had talked about on Bite Me, but he put a post up on Facebook, and it was a cooler plum ass full of fish, and he's like, I don't know what you crybabies are talking about. It's still great over here. And I commented something. It was something along the lines of, bullshit. And his response was, "Oh, I would expect somebody like you to show up and spread more crap on this page." Blah blah blah. And all right, well, now you're going to engage me. Let's do it. And so I just started scrolling backwards on his timeline, and right about 2018 was the exact same damn picture. He didn't even
I remember
crop
this.
it. He didn't even flip it. He didn't do. He just and didn't delete the old picture off his Facebook. And I'm gonna tell you, man, the comment section went really downhill from there for him.
But that's what they do. I remember that specific instance.
It was a fun one. It's still one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, I remember it. Dean had a funny comment because this one cooler was just stacked full of trout, and they looked enormous. They looked enormous. But the cooler was like a 14-inch, 15-inch cooler, so they looked like they were all 30s. Well, that's one way to do it.
Yeah, man. I've seen guys around here. It's a small town. You know what the hell everybody's doing. I mean, I've seen their truck and boat in the driveway, parked at the house for 3 days, and then they're posting pictures. It's on fire down here. But hey, it's a marketing ploy. It's a marketing game. You think you got to keep your face out there. And I mean, one thing I don't know, some people live and die by they think that the Facebook pictures are gonna make or break them. But the thing about the Facebook pictures is it's not a worldwide audience. It is your friends. It is people who you have connected with. Mm-hmm. So it's consistently the same circle of people that are seeing your stuff every day. I mean, it is people who have friended you and made that connection. And then the analog is what it is. The people that you interact with regularly are going to see that regularly. Mm-hmm. So posting those pictures you're going to bombard the same people. I have not found that generates business. That does not make the phone ring. That does not attract customers to your business. So it's just, it's one of those ego kind of trip things, I guess, but I don't see it as a very effective way of selling fishing trip.
Well, like Scott, you're just talking about, if it sucks, I'm gonna tell you it sucks, because that's at least you're not deceiving any potential, friends or clients or something. That's the thing that gets me. Number one, you're being deceptive. I mean, they want to be able to trust that they're going with someone that knows what he's doing. And number two, like you're taking their money, and you're probably just telling them, yeah, I should have been here yesterday. I mean, it just stinks that's what gets me, Scott.
And exactly what Dean was saying. Here a while back, I ran into a guy on the dock, another guide, young guide. His people got off the boat, all head down, kind of rough day looking, and he said, man, where are they at? He's just hitting me up for any kind of tips I might give him. And then saw later where he posted on Facebook that, they had a great day. Come on down, fishing's hot. And I know damn good well he'd suck, because he wouldn't hit me up for tips if he was on a bunch of fish.
Yeah.
But it's panic. If they're not on fish, they got customers wanting to come. They're not on fish. They got to show them something. So I know some of them will use those pictures as backup to the should have been here yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. I mean, it goes back to the thing we've talked about. ask questions, understand a little bit about where you're going to be going and who you're going to be going with, Caleb. I mean, you go ahead.
I've got 3 or 4 customers that sent me deposits last summer because they wanted to chase schools in the fall. And I've yet to take a single one of them because I told the schools this fall didn't really happen. This spring's been weird. I'm like, man, just hold tight. When it happens, it happens. We'll give you a call. If I gotta drive, if I gotta go down to somewhere completely different, I'm not gonna have you come over here and at the end of the day owe me money when I know damn well that if we go out, we might see 1 or 2 schools, and that's not what.
Yeah.
When you called me and said this is what I want to do, and I said okay, that's going to be a November thing, and they sent me a deposit or whatever. Now if they call me and say, you know what, I just want to go boat riding. I don't give a damn, then yeah, we'll go do it. But not once have I told them yet, yeah, come on down. I could use the money. That's another chunk of change that I don't have. But at the end of the day, their dollar means as much to me as my dollar does, and I'm not going to steal it from them.
Well, that's why you're Caleb McCumber, damn it.
Damn it.
And these guys are on this podcast for that reason. Don't think I didn't do a little research on you guys either. Well, I knew Scott, but
I don't know. I don't know. Let me see how well you know Scott. If you'll stand by. Dean and I just got this text message from Scott.
Okay.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
I was wondering if that was going to surface today. There we go. We go. 36 minutes in, and we got butt crack.
There's the butt
Here
crack.
comes the canceling. I don't have any context on that whatsoever, and I'm not sure
talking about the website. And Dean said, "Where do I put my credit card?" And Scott sent that.
So Caleb was sending me the bloopers from his video, and you need to put that. The world needs to see that. That was freaking hilarious.
I can't believe that.
My comment was, I was like, "That's amazing. Where do I sign up? Where do I put my credit card?" And that was Scott's reply.
I like the square. I like the rectangle. So
what he meant.
What was going on with these bloopers, man?
That's proof that Caleb is illiterate.
Yeah. So to put it out very shortly, Mike wanted me to do a welcome video for Angler U. So the landing page had me on there saying what it was. And Mike wrote me a script. And Mike wrote me a 3-minute tongue twister with 7-syllable words.
He did not.
It kicked my ass all morning. And then finally I was like, you know what? I'm not using a script. I'm just going to freestyle it like I always do. And it worked out. But
there aren't that many 7-syllable words in the English language.
No, it was bad.
Oh, man. All right, this is another good one, and all 3 of you guys have experience with this. I know Scott and Dean. I don't know if you guys have fished a lot in the Carolinas, but I know you fished all over Florida and other places. Hey guys, love the podcast. I live in South Carolina. I think this is one of our regular listeners. We have several in South Carolina. I live in South Carolina, and I take your tips and apply them to South Carolina. So my question is, does a Texas redfish act the same as a South Carolina red? So the topic I put out there is a redfish, Dean.
Yes, I have fished in North Carolina a lot and Virginia Beach, and I've caught a lot of redfish over there. The only difference between the redfish over there and the redfish here is that you're fishing in the shade of trees in the Carolinas. They fight just the same. But it was amazing when I went over there. The forest grows right up to the edge of the bays. Pine trees, oak trees, hickory trees, 60 feet tall. And it was so weird to be fishing in the shadow of the forest and catching speckled trout and redfish. So to me, I found it to be exactly the same. The scenery was quite different. The biggest thing, and it had nothing to do with fighting the fish, but the tides over there are so dramatic. They're 5 and 6 foot tides. I mean, you can be on a sandbar in the morning that is bone dry, sticking out of the water 3 feet. And in 4 hours, that water is 4 feet deep in that area. So the tides were very dramatic. And if you really didn't know what you were doing, you could get in trouble with the tides over there. But I found fish. I mean, we were throwing topwaters, we were throwing spook juniors, soft plastics, the exact same lures, and catching trout and redfish.
Scott, is there anywhere or any type of fish that you're like, okay, this is different from what I'm used to?
The tide thing is huge over there. It's a big difference. If the tide's not moving, you're not catching fish. And the biggest thing I saw, I fished with a couple guides over there. We did a DOA media event and got to fish there for a few days with that. Fished there a couple other times, but that one was really interesting because it was all the DOA pro staff guides, and they wanted to put us on a bunch of fish, and we moved way more than we move over here.
Yeah.
And you'd go, at the start of the falling tide, we're fishing way up in the creeks and fishing some little oyster reefs and stuff. Well, 30 minutes later, that's dry, and we're backing off, and we just kept moving and moving further and further out towards the open water. And that was the biggest thing to me was, hey man, we're on a good bite here. We got to go. We got to get out of here before we get stuck. And then we would go find another place that looked really similar to that and fish around another little oyster reef that was a little bit deeper. And that to me was the biggest shocker, I guess, was, I'm used to getting in one area and I don't turn my motor on again most days. I'm just staying in the same area and I get on a pattern and work it. Theirs was a whole lot of fish for 20, 30 minutes and bail and go fish another spot 20, 30 minutes. And then when the tide quit moving, it was time to sit back and eat a sandwich and just wait it out. And the cool thing is the tide turns right around and starts coming right back in pretty quick. There's not a whole lot of dead time. Where ours is more wind driven, theirs is, the wind doesn't really have an effect on it at all. The tides overcome the wind.
To me, Caleb, the biggest, and trust me, I am more aware than anyone. I am certainly not you three guys, but I've fished a lot of places for a lot of years. To me, the biggest adjustments I've always made, just even on the Texas coast, I fished a little bit in Alabama, a little bit in Florida, is the structure where these fish are. Like you guys know, like sometimes it's real deep, sometimes it's oyster, sometimes it's logs or a bulkhead, and now where I am, it's grass and stuff. So like the structure to me would be more like where they're holding up. But what's your experience been?
I just go to the Salt Strong Hotspots app. It pretty much tells me everything I need to know about every spot in the world.
Oh, see, now that you mention that, we're all gonna get those things pop up on our phone. Yeah, that drives me nuts, man.
I shit you not. I was desperate enough one time in Delacroix, and I can't cast too much shade because I've done collaborative stuff with Salt Strong, but my good buddies.
Oh, you're not casting much shade at all.
Yeah, no. So I was like, oh man, this is bad. And somebody told me, well, the guys that won last week only came and pre-fished one day and used the app, and I was like, well, I've got free access to it because I'm part of the damn app, and it wasn't my idea, and I have not contributed to it. However, I do have access to it. And so I went and looked, and I was looking at these spots, and I know Delacroix like the back of my hand. If Delacroix, Homa, all that stuff, I know it just as well as I know Matagorda. And I'm looking at these spots, and I'm like, it is 32 foot deep right there. And then I look at another one.
Maybe they unlocked the secret.
Like, I don't know where these spots come from on this app, but I can tell you, holy crap, what's going on right now. It's kind of like when it says over by the causeway by marker 37 that here's all the grass that's here, and it shows like 3 little islands. And what is there, Dean? 400 acres of grass there? It don't stop.
Well, on the app, if you look at it, it's got a circle around the whole thing. So how can they be wrong?
Yeah,
go here. Go here.
Fair enough.
Hey, shout out to them though, man, because whatever their algorithm is, we got to get that. Because you just say the word Salt Strong, and all of a sudden you're going to get all these pop-ups.
That company,
the question was about the difference for me is whenever I've gone to different places, is where you're going to find them in terms of structure and depth.
Oh yeah, that sounds good.
I need you to send me the password. I want to log in and see what I got to do tomorrow. Catch some fish.
I can sure send it to you. It's right there with those apps that tells you if you're going to catch a bunch of fish tomorrow or not, and doesn't have shit all to do with what the moon phase is.
How many stars is tomorrow?
I almost said something, the word stars in it, but I didn't. But hey, and to be clear, Angler U does not have a map. I'm not trying to degrade somebody else's hotspots map. I'm not even going to attempt to do that.
Yeah,
crap.
that's you made that clear.
But no, man, you know, I kind of, if I go somewhere like completely new out, I still can find similarities between the waters I know and where I'm at, and I'll kind of start there and just be observant and move around until I figure out what the pattern is for the fish there. Because the one thing that is true is a Louisiana redfish does not necessarily act like a Texas redfish very often at all, but they kind of do the same things on incoming tides, on outgoing tides, on things like that. So I just take what I know and move it from there. Or Frank said, let's make a PVC pole app. I don't know. He's pretty busy. He moved to rock. I mean, what?
So the thing about those spots, I mean, whenever you take a map and you put a circle on it and you say that this is hot, this is whatever. People ask me all the time, you know, I get emails, phone calls, whatever, and I try to be as polite as I can about answering those questions. And I tell them, I can put an X on the map and say, go here. This is where I caught him today. That doesn't mean jack crap for tomorrow.
Exactly.
It don't even help us.
No, it doesn't. You take any area on that map, break it down into smaller segments, and then you go out there and do the legwork. There is no answer. There is no map that has a dot on it. That you gather information. It's a big equation. It's just not that simple.
And it always changes. So for example, the first year that I fished the Redfish World Series, every pond at the end of a creek, drain, canal, whatever you want to call it, that was round, held fish. Every one of them. There was good fish in every one of them. The next year I went back and there wasn't a fish in any round pond. They were in long, skinny ponds that had broken marsh in them. And it always changed. The funny part about Delacroix is, and there's some people over here that have been there. There's some people that haven't. But we've cashed checks. I think I've cashed a check every time I've been in Delacroix. And I probably fished it 2 or 3 times a year for the past 4 years. I think there is one place that I've ever caught a tournament fish twice. That they're never in the same spot. They're never doing the same thing. It's a different move every time. And so, you know, like Dean said, the X marks the spot stuff. You know, if you're in Matagorda or something, there's a reef that holds fish. Well, you know, yeah, there's probably going to be fish on that reef pretty, not all the time, but pretty steadily. But the whole snake oil of this spot is where they're at. It's one of those things we talk about it. What are the biggest mistakes you see in fishermen that don't have a lot of hours under their belt? Is that they caught fish in one spot and they go back to it every time, expecting it to happen again. I don't even. That wasn't even the question, but I feel like we answered something.
No, I think that was good. That's good discussion because Scott, you know, I know you have feelings on this, but what you know, I've talked about on this podcast not too long ago. I could tell you exactly where I was, like exactly where I was when I caught fish, and even an hour later, there's no guarantees. I mean, I could probably count on one hand what Caleb was talking about, like places that I know are like a spot that I like. You know, a spot, because generally it's like the area or what the conditions are, not that spot, you know?
Yeah. Friday to Sunday was a good example. Friday, I had the guys in there and it was mist and raining off and on us. And I went to one specific little pond that I kind of liked. It's long and narrow, got a couple little creeks off of it, and it was absolutely stuffed full of fish. They were everywhere. And the guys we were sight casting, but they were just blind casting in between fish and catching fish. I don't know how many they pulled out of there. There's a dozen or more. And it's not a big pond. And Sunday we went back in there. Yeah, I know it didn't get run over on Saturday because there's never anybody in there. And I pulled the whole damn thing, saw one fish. And,
you know,
it was clear, sunny, and you could see everything. You know, it wasn't like we were running blind in the clouds like we were the day before.
Yeah.
So that all changes. And as far as like spots, Dean and I used to go over to Florida ride over there in our trucks, and we'd be looking at maps the whole way. Dean's got a map over in the passenger seat, and he's talking to everybody, and they'd say, "Oh yeah, Miguel Bay is hot." We're like, "All right, cool. Find Miguel Bay on there." We went over to Miguel Bay. It's huge. That place was gigantic. Same thing with Cockroach Bay. Hey, Cockroach Bay is on, man. It's on fire. It is the biggest maze of little lakes and ponds that you've ever seen. And it's all covered up by mangrove trees. But they would tell us, "Oh, Miguel Bay, it's on." Well, where? Where in Miguel Bay are we supposed to go?
Frank's over there in the chat, and I dropped him a pin on a pond that was probably about the size of my house. I dropped him a pin on it because there was tagged redfish swimming around in it. And I don't think Frank has a truck or a boat yet out of that deal. It works. It just works different.
It definitely does. All right, so let's see who else we can tick off in today's podcast. We're going after the tournaments, the babes on the bay, salt, whatever it's called, salt, whatever, life. Let's go to this because, and then we'll get to, we'll play the audio of the redfish release, which is pretty cool for our listeners that didn't see the video, and what would Scott do. But Scott, you mentioned this. Somebody was asking, what's going to happen to the dead mangroves around Port O'Connor? Are they going to come back? And he was referencing the 83 and 89 freezes. What are you seeing there, man? What do you think?
Well, the 83 freeze, it doesn't really compare. I mean, it was just as bad a freeze, but there wasn't any mangroves here to speak of. And there was a few that were scattered around. It was mostly cordgrass. The mangroves didn't really come in for quite a few years after that. I'm driving around out there and poling around, and I'm seeing little bitty mangroves everywhere now, and they're sprouting up. I watched the black mangroves last year that had sprouted following the freeze, and they were just getting big enough to where they bloomed and seeded. And so I'm guessing all those seeds went all over the place because we had some super high tides, and it pushed those seeds way back in there. It's all coming back. It's going to be 4 or 5 years, 10 years, I don't know, before it's back the way it was. Cool thing is the cordgrass is kind of taking over where the mangroves used to be, and where they're all dead, getting a whole lot more cordgrass. And cordgrass is actually better habitat
for what you're doing.
For what I do. I think the fish utilize it a little more than the little fish do. The shrimp and the small bait fish can hide better in that than they can in the mangroves.
Yeah. Dean, I was out there, actually it was the last time I was out there with my wife. She even commented, like, we're seeing some mangroves, man. We're seeing some mangroves more than I thought would come back,
Some places, yes, and then others not so much. But they've had time to rebound, and they're coming on strong. But I haven't been over to the park to those red mangroves. I bet I haven't been over there in 6 months to check on those things I planted that survived last winter. And then, of course, they obviously survived this winter because it wasn't that bad. But I got to check on those things again. But some areas are thriving, absolutely exploding. But there's other patches that they look pretty bleak, man. And the only way those are going to get more mangroves is as the ones that are growing now drop seeds, and then those seeds float into those areas. And they have to land in a favorable spot and take a root.
Caleb, have you noticed that Dean is looking at the back wall a lot? Is he taking inventory of his antlers?
Okay. I was Chris Collins.
It looks like you're counting the number of antlers you have in the back.
Well, I was okay, here's how behind the scenes stuff works. Chris Collins, huge fan of the podcast, fished with most of us, I believe. And how the weird
spread unneeded rumors about me.
Well, he was asking me. He said he was asking me what's the length on that trout on the wall, because he was comparing it to the deer antlers, and I actually have no idea. And I turned around and looked, and I was like, that's probably in the 27 range. And then he was asking me about the antlers, and I was like, I got no way to judge that, man. I texted him. I said, let me go get the tape measure. I'll check it out. So I was waiting for a break in the action.
He's measuring antlers and fish.
Is that a sign that the content sucks?
What's that? Yeah, I was losing interest in y'all's conversation.
This is literally a measuring contest. Literally a measuring contest right now. All right. So before we get to what would Scott do, what would Dean do, what would Ken do, I want to play that audio of the redfish release. Even if you can't see exactly, you can go to the YouTube channel and see it. But the audio, I know a lot of people are interested in things like that. It's $120,000 fish, man, plus a Lone Star green tag fish for a year's supply of Lone Star. I see Dean drinking a Lone Star right now. So let's listen to that real quick, and then we'll get back. All right. What would Scott do? What would Caleb do? What would Dean do? This is the time in the program when we all open our apps and see what the latest is on the Gulf Coast, all the way up and down the Texas Gulf Coast and beyond. But let's start kind of mid coast up there with Caleb. I'm gonna put you on the spot because I usually make you go last because you're opening it as we go. But what do you got there, and what are we doing?
I usually like when Scott goes first, and I just go, yeah.
I know.
That.
I know. Yeah. That's
why
I did this.
The thing of it is these things kind of become Groundhog Days for entire seasons, but we'll say it again.
Mm-hmm.
You got big tides, you got early summer happening, shad hatches, stuff like that. Push back against the grass, push back in the grass if you can. Get on the shorelines if you're looking to fish any kind of shallow. If you are wanting to fish deeper, then you're drifting over shell or grass beds targeting sand spots, shell. Us Matagorda people, we're just targeting stuff we can hang our lures on and never get them back.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah,
I've been there.
We're fishing high tides and warm water. I don't think it's gotten so hot yet that you're kind of done mid-morning, but we are getting there. It's been in the 90s the last couple of days, so things are heating up. Go enjoy the marshes while you can before they're so hot that they're not holding them quite as good anymore towards the end of June and July.
Yeah, I will say, Dean, it got pretty hot pretty quick on Saturday. It was in the low 90s already.
It's cooking out there right now, but you know what? I got shade over my head.
Hey, that's when I took my boat in. He's putting it on right now.
Man,
it's badass. I don't care what Scott says. Scott can send me that picture for all I care.
Like Caleb said, man, the shad are just blowing up all over the bays. The channels are full of shad coming in from the jetties, birds everywhere. Jack Crevalle have been spotted on the flats. I mean, the seasons are changing. It's summertime, man, and couldn't prove any of those theories from what I did today. Just to be totally transparent.
Today, notwithstanding, it's all happening.
And it was decent. I mean, it was decent. We missed some good fish, landed a few decent ones, but overall, it was pretty slow. But all that being said, the wind was challenging today, though. The wind kept me off of some spots that I would have liked to have got to. It was just too difficult to be there. So yeah. I stuck with kind of Old Faithful. But even going back to what we were talking about earlier, I mean, I went to my go-to spot that has been money for me. And, man, I couldn't pull a fish out of there. And I even stuck with it. I was like, I know they're here, man. It's like, I got to do this before I give up on it. I got to do it one more time, and just never got the payoff in there. And then branched out after that. But tomorrow the wind is supposed to crank even more. So that's not going to help anything. But looking forward, the rest of the week is relatively breezy, not as violent as it's going to be tomorrow. And it was way windier than forecast. I don't care what the forecast said. I don't even know what it said. I just know it lied.
I'm going to be riding that rig. I'm going to spend some money this week. That's for dang sure. Got the K-top going on there. Got my trolling motor going to fix. Going to do all the water pump. All that
you're going to be down this weekend for the holiday?
No, I am not for the holiday because of the holiday, and I had my fill of a lot of boats on the water Saturday. But
Babes on the Bay with the Memorial Day back to back.
oh, heck no.
You do that, and the rest of summer going to be easy.
I should get a medal. But I'm going to be down there soon thereafter. Scott, anything to add for the polling and Back Lake people?
Yeah, something that was kind of interesting on one of the fish. Had a couple guys that were staying in town overnight, and they wanted to keep a fish for dinner, and so they cleaned it. And I said, let's take a look at that stomach. Let's see what's actually going on, because they were all tailing. This fish came out of a big school of tails, probably 7,500 fish in it, and it was one of the larger fish we caught that day. And when they opened it up, it was full of crabs.
We were just talking about that.
Little bitty small crabs. There was shrimp jumping everywhere. I'd have laid money that they were pulling shrimp out of that grass. There was not one shrimp in that stomach, and it was stuffed full of little small dime to quarter size crabs. So that kind of changed my strategy up just a little bit.
Yeah.
Fish a little slower, fish a little lower, and get it down there in front of their faces. Because usually when they're tailing in their own shrimp, you can throw a soft plastic in there and kind of bump it out, and they'll chase it. These fish weren't chasing much. The lure had to land in there and sink a little bit, and then you get a hit. As far as what I'm going to do, everything I'm seeing is a lot of wind and a lot of higher tides. I actually got out the old map the other day and started looking on Google Earth at some places that I've never been. Believe it or not, there are places I haven't ever been. But I was looking at crazy stuff, like Caleb was talking about on a tournament, going to the crazy stuff. I was looking at things I know would normally be an inch, 2 inches, if not dry, and kind of mapping out some pathways back through there that I can maybe make my way through the trees and see if they're back behind the trees. Because with this wind, I mean, they're talking 20 to 25 to 30, 35 mile an hour winds overnight a couple of times. That water's going to push way high. It's already high. And so I bet it's going to be up 2 feet. It'll be like a storm tide.
Yeah.
I'm going to go
now that's information we can use, all that stuff that you just said.
You know where I've never been? Let me tell you where I've never been. I've never been in a group text where a dude sends me a dude's ass crack.
You have now.
There I have. How about getting weird?
Yeah. And the other reason I'm not going
to swipe a card.
Yeah.
It's getting weird to a new level.
That's right. The other reason I'm not going down this weekend is because I got to walk. Walk. Heroes on the Water.
Heroes on the Water, man.
A bunch of people are here. Fire station number 8. If anybody's in Houston and wants to come down, 7 a.m. We're going to leave there. So I'm going to do that walk, and then I'm going to do some serious cooking. I'm going to cook all kinds of crap this weekend. But
also, what do you on the Heroes on the Water thing? That the walk deal is to raise money. You don't have to go walk. If you can't make it down there, Camille's got on the Facebook post how to get in and just donate some money to the cause. We take wounded vets out kayak fishing. It's a great project, great organization. And if you can get out there and walk, more power to you.
I'll be there.
Not, send some money.
Carry the load, and it's benefiting Heroes on the Water. All right, so a little bit longer on the show today because it was cool, and our guys are too good to cut short. So don't forget all the good stuff about subscribing wherever you get your podcast: Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, Bite Me group page, and of course the YouTube channel. You can see the video there as well. These 3 dudes, I say it all the time, awesome dudes, awesome fishermen. And hopefully everybody's learning a lot. It seems like everybody really enjoys the podcast. So you guys have a great Memorial Day. Hopefully everybody has their power back in the greater Houston area. And if you can get out to the walk, we'll be out there. Until then, catch them up. We will talk to you next time.